What it do?
Wow, this is crazy. It's been a while, obviously, and just really excited to be back and regularly talking to you guys, connecting. But before that, I wanted to do the little intro that we Black to infinity for your community. Black to infinity for your music needs. Black to infinity today.
Brum, brum. Been a minute.
Oh man, it has. It has. I was like, what are the words? What are the words?
I'm screaming.
Oh man. Welcome to our second video stream. Not a stream, but will be a stream thing. My name is Sunday.
I'm Aaliyah.
And welcome to Black to Infinity and the format that this is. We're still noodling on what the name is going to be. But before we discuss, a number of topics and just kind of what's going on in music today, because I think we're actually in like a really interesting place right now. We're literally at the halfway point of the month, at the halfway point of the year. Juneteenth is tomorrow. And yeah, it's kind of, I think we kind of want to have a bit of like a state of where we're at with music right now. And yeah, just talk about, what we love.
Yeah. So, as you guys may have noticed, we haven't uploaded in quite some time. It's been a minute since you've heard these voices. Hope you missed us. I know we both individually have also missed coming together. And yeah, I think it's, to Sunday's point, we're in a very interesting place with streaming and technology and a lot of things that we're going to get into. One of which that affected our show being Spotify changing the way that they run the back end of their platform. So we were no longer able to do our music and talk format, as anyone who listened prior would have known, where it felt like kind of like a true radio format with music and talk breaks, which we really loved and really enjoyed doing. Something that did feel kind of like that classic vibe you get from listening to the radio in your car, Quiet Storm Radio, things that we've talked about that inspired us growing up. So this is our kind of, we've already grieved privately. So this is our public moment of silence, grieving moment for Black to Infinity Radio as it once was, before it rebirths into the phoenix of what it's about to be.
Rebirth into the phoenix is funny. Yeah, like a little eulogy. I mean, bro, it's so funny because Spotify, like you and I were talking that I feel like we were both early on Spotify. Like I was right there on the front lines. As soon as I saw people like starting to like show like their Spotify activity on Facebook in I think it was 2011. And I was like, what is this? And I started, using Spotify at the time. And I remember my mom worked for the government. So she was like very like paranoid about any sort of like illegal activity, downloading music, and LimeWire, FrostWire, all that stuff is like really popular still at the time. We're kind of at the tail end, but like it's still prevalent. And my mom is like, what is this Spotify thing? Like she swore it was LimeWire. She was like, are you downloading anything illegal? Like I'm going to get flagged. It's going to like endanger my job and everything. And so I had to hide using Spotify from her for a really long time because she was just like, how are you listening to this music for free? Like, yeah, there are ads, but it's not Pandora where you can't, like, because Pandora, like, you couldn't choose the song you were listening to. You would just hope that the song that you wanted to play was going to play. And my mom was like, "You're not using YouTube. You're not like, how are you just pressing play on music?" Um, yeah, it was a pretty funny time. But like, yeah, I've been with Spotify from the very beginning, and it's always been like just like a platform that I was really excited about, and still am. Like, this is not a, I'm not trying to shit on Spotify, but just like I felt like so many creators and people were doing cool things with that music and talk feature. And I think there were, it was just like, it was just like a new frontier. It was like, how are people going to use this creatively? And I really loved what we were able to kind of get into the rhythm of doing and building. Unfortunately, I mean, we did the research. Like, there really isn't a great replacement for something like that. That is wide, that is accessible for our audience, top to bottom. So, and even, Spotify, just being a Spotify only podcast slash, well, not podcast, but show or whatever, um, that still had its limitations as well. So, yeah, it forced us to pivot. It forced us to find a new solution. And we're hoping that this is something that we can just, regularly come on, and just talk to you guys, talk about our favorite things. We're sad that we can't legally just play any song that we want on the stream. But I think there's still so much to talk about and get into, when it comes to the state of music. And yeah, that's why we wanted to do this again.
Yeah, while you were talking, I was like, wild of Spotify to use those colors, actually, now that I think of it. Like, why did they use colors that could very easily be associated with LimeWire?
Right.
But,
Facts.
right? Like, interesting. Um, but yeah, totally agree. I think hopefully in the future we do find a format that allows us to play music and kind of get into it the way we once did. But yeah, we wanted to continue to build community, to continue to have some of the conversations that we were having before. And yeah, dive into some of these topics. And I think the the Spotify of it all, the streaming of it all has us thinking a lot about music and tech. So that's one of the things we're gonna get into today.
Yeah, for sure. So recently I saw Vic Mensa had this whole kind of statement about, it was like a video that was going around on Instagram and TikTok, and he's been doing a lot of content, by the way. Like, I think he's been pretty active on TikTok, and I'll see his videos, and it's just kind of funny, even how his, I guess, crowd approval or like public perception has gone from like super positive to like very negative to like kind of coming back up again. And anyway, he's always been someone that's been super like for the artists, talking about artist rights, and kind of had that revolutionary mindset coming from Chicago. And he talked about just the value of streaming, and he said people feel like that shit is not worth $10. I think he's probably talking about Spotify or Apple Music. Artists are already people that are predisposed to suicide, laying bare the mental toll of the streaming economy. Um, yeah, and he was just talking about like how he feels like streaming makes artists feel like, one, their music is not being listened to, it's not being valued from the perspective of like from a monetary perspective. You want to continue to create art, but you're no longer, it's like you miss the cut, like you're not in an industry anymore that where you can make enough money from your music to be able to continue going and funding what you want to do. And like today's artists, you have to be an entrepreneur. Like, there's no way where you could just make music and just be like a happy, oh yeah, I just make music and perform and survive. Like, you have to make merch, you have to tour consistently and frequently overseas, here. You have to, I mean, you see some artists that are getting to streaming actually, and being doing that type of stuff. Like, you can't just be someone that makes music. And in turn, the labels know that as well. And that's why the 360 deal is so popular as well. Like, um, the money that was once made in that CD area is just, it's dried up, it's gone because people aren't buying CDs anymore. They're paying point zero zero whatever of a cent per stream for a song versus $10, $15 for a CD in order to hear one song or a whole.
Yeah, I think it is wild because like you and I are like kind of, in that bridge generation, the zillennial or whatever they're kind of calling us. And I think like we can remember like buying CDs maybe more actively, or our parents buying them or whatever that situation was. But the albums that I have on CD, I know them front to back. I know every little part of that album. I put on Sierra's, I don't it definitely wasn't her first album. I think it's Sierra's second album.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a road this is semi random, but I was doing a road trip, and I randomly put that album on and I was like, wow, I know every single sound, boom, tick, of this album because I had it on CD. So I'd play it over and over and over again. So thinking about just like the devaluing of music in and of itself, to Vic Mensa's point, I think is like really interesting when you think of like oh, I heard this song. If it's not popping, if it's not a hit, like I'm not like re-listening to it all the time. Maybe you just have like all the options in the world rather than like this is my collection of music that like I really am into, and I'm learning it actively. I'm like big. I'm revisiting with this. I'm sitting with this music um for an extended period of time, and I think just the model of streaming and how much access we have kind of like we don't have as much incentive to do that. And yeah, like we're seeing Vic Mensa essentially become a content creator um in order to promote his own music and stay in the game, which is kind of crazy. Like you mentioned, I think like him, Chance, and a lot of people from that like Save Money like era, like they've kind of struggled in the general music landscape right now. I think it is like a sound thing too. Um but I also think it has to do with like a perception of being corny and like all these different things, and like I don't know, you used to be able to kind of like have your fan base of people that was buying your music and that would be good. Like you didn't have to have everybody's opinion. But now when you need millions of streams to make anything, like yeah, you need a way bigger fan base to make any type of noise, or you have to put like a ridiculous strain on your body going on tour all the time, etc. But it's like if people aren't buying those tickets, like um so yeah, I think it's interesting to see Vic Mensa, and then we also saw Chance also kind of changing the way he's interacting with his audiences. And I think they're both people that kind of like think like that and maybe aren't willing to give into the beast that is the music industry. Maybe no shade, no tea to other artists, but like they obviously have like a particular, like you mentioned, revolutionary stance about the business of it all. So I think it's really important to hear him speaking out on a lot of the things he's been speaking out on, but I don't think this is quite talked about enough in terms of it. A lot of conversations have been had, especially like when Tidal came around. I know James Blake recently brought this conversation into the zeitgeist too. Um, but it's really interesting from the audience perspective, because we've been trained now to not buy music, to not spend money on a single song. Um, so it's like that what type of shift it would take to do anything else.
Yeah. I think to your point as well, like when you think about Spotify, and yeah, I mean, it's an even larger conversation with just technology in general, and it's not just music. You see it in film or TV or in other mediums as well, but or even like Amazon. Like I feel like it was all about prioritizing convenience for the consumer as well as access, and I think what you're seeing with a lot of these industries now is like, it's almost like the snake is eating its own tail. Like it's come around to bite itself, in the sense that the things that originally why these companies were created for, it's like, yeah, you create it for that, but then capitalism comes in and it's like, how do we get more? How do we make more money? How do we generate more money? How do we bring in more ads? And also, like, these companies, we have to say these companies are created by tech people. These aren't artists that are creating these companies. These aren't people that are creative minded. So you have these people, like I think of Zaslav with Warner, and just like him being very much like a corporate kind of tech dude, and him being very much about like, okay, but like bottom line, like, are we going to make money off of this or not? Like, yeah, we already made this movie, but the marketing budget to be able to promote it is actually going to be as much as maybe what we generate. So we're just going to kill the movie. And artists that have, and I'm saying artists, I mean, they are artists, but actors who have been a part of movie, like they've been shooting movies for like 2 years, and they were so excited for this project, ready for it to come out. And it's like,
The
it's never going to
director
see the
who's
light
been
of day.
working on it for 10, like
The director, the
the
writers, right? So
producer,
it's like
yeah.
everyone that's worked on this, that you've dedicated your life, it doesn't even see the light of day. Or when it does see the light of day, it goes on Netflix for, a week, and you just see like, what are the first week numbers? And then based on the first week numbers, if it does really well, Netflix will continue to push it at the top of most people's algorithms. If it doesn't, it gets buried, and then no one sees the work that you created. And I mean, they're adjacent. They're not exactly the same, but I think that's the problem that you have when it's tech people, and you have the influence. And obviously, capitalism has always been a thing with music, from the very beginning. So let's not act like that's not been a thing. But I think the difference is the the hyper the hyper convenience aspect of it, and how it skewed so far to the consumer that, yeah, at first the consumer is like, yeah, this is what I want. What I want is to be able to put on this TV show or binge this TV show at any time, and I don't have to wait for the show to come on at 7:30 p.m. and then wait for the next week, or whenever, for the next episode to come out, and I could just watch it all at once. But then now it's like, what do I watch? No one's telling me what to watch. I have to go find what to watch. Like, and you end up, or like, oh, this show is on a different platform, I have to get this platform too. And now you have 10 different streaming platforms where it's just like cable again, but you're paying damn near more. And I think you see the same exact thing happening in streaming, where they valued the listener so much, and we were so excited about being able to just play the music at any time. But now, like, now it dissuades artists from making cohesive, tight, amazing projects. I'll never forget when Chris Brown put out that, I can't even remember what that album was called. And I don't actively listen to Chris Brown, but like, he put out an album that had like 50 songs on it. And if you understand the science of how streaming works, it was just like, oh yeah, well, I could put this out because if people play the whole album, like, I'll just get more. Like, volume is better than not volume, because I can get more streams on more of the songs that I put out, versus just putting like the best piece of artwork that I can put out together. And I'll never forget that, because like, I was like, oh, it's shifting, it's changing. Like, these artists don't expect you to listen to their albums front to back. They just want you to pick. They just want to put out a bunch of stuff and see which one sticks or which one blows up. And then, it devalues the listening experience. Now we're almost trained for certain artists to like, yeah, I'm not going to go check out their full album. I'm just going to look at the features on the track list and click the artist that has a feature that I'm interested in, that feature. And I'm going to listen to that song, and I might add it to a playlist. I might not, and then move on. And yeah, it just has changed the listening experience, the way that artists are treated and valued. And it's really, really sad. And I think we're getting to a point now where it's like, these technology companies, especially like a Spotify, they wanted the veneer of caring for artists, and now they don't even care to have that veneer anymore. It's like, yeah, I don't care. We're just gonna do AI curated playlists. We're not gonna work with influencers and DJs and music people to show that like, oh yeah, we're bringing in people who are knowledgeable about music to curate these playlists. We're just going to have an AI do it. Why? Because AI is the big thing right now. And a lot of companies now are just like, yeah, if we don't have AI somewhere on our platform, or AI's like not even the functionality, but the word AI is written somewhere, then we're going to be seen as behind the times. So, you can make an argument that Spotify's algorithm from the very beginning was using AI, but that's not sexy or something that you can sell to the consumer. So what are we going to sell? We're going to sell AI curated playlists. And yeah, I just think that you're really seeing this technology companies struggling now with like, hey, we're prioritizing you creators and artists, but also like we're not at all. We just want to say that.
Yeah, I think that, like you, I was definitely very early on Spotify, and I literally would say at a time that like the Spotify algorithm knows me better than myself. Like in terms of just like the music I was able to discover, people that it put me on, etc. And I think that's like really for a time like what it had going for it. Obviously there's like the streaming in general, the access, but I think like what it had going over other platforms that maybe did similar things was like how good the algorithm was, and I don't think it really needed this like AI touch. Um and then to a point you brought up a few minutes ago, I think it's like, yeah, capitalism has always existed in music. We can think about like Motown being like, all right, should this group perform this song? Let's try it. Let's give it to them. Let's see if they do it better. Let's give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if they do it fit. It was
Okay.
very much like factory like, and that was kind of the whole thing in Detroit and everything. So, like, again, this has been happening, but like when you were catering to radio, that was one thing. Now that you're curating to even another technology platform of like TikTok or what, or social media in general, it's like you're dealing with like the two beasts of the technology of like the streaming on this side and then catering to the audience on social media wherever they are. And it's like both the algorithms are like doing their own work. And then now there's like the AI DJ being like, hey, I'm about to do these tunes for you. And he's like talking to you and everything. And it's really dystopian and corny and scary. And he's like, we're going to start with these tracks. I know you love this one. Da-da-da-da-da. And it's just like so far removed from like the human touch of like a radio DJ being like, this is what I'm really into. This artist is like really curating their own sound, or like I've seen them grow up and like now they've, they're evolving into like this part of their career. Like there's so much we're missing from that, to Vic Vincent's point, and now we're putting so much on the artist to do that. And like again, it is wrapped in with like the film and TV streaming too, because not having cable, we don't have as many shows like 106 in Park or TRL or like whatever that is to be the tastemakers of it. So once again, the artist has to do that themselves and promoting themselves and basically creating their own podcast or like whatever it is, like jumping on any of these like social media things or trends or shows to like try to get seen. And I don't know, it's just it's a very clear move with AI specifically to continue to devalue creatives of all kinds. And the fact that, yeah, it's seen as like behind the times rather than like literally terrifying for everyone to be tacking AI onto everything, even though a lot of these things were already technically AI, as you were saying, is crazy. Like you can just tell on Spotify the quality of things that have gone down immensely. On some of these other platforms, the quality of things that were probably once done by a human that no longer are. I'm thinking about like Spotify Wrapped last year and how it was just like just
Terrible.
boring. There was no character, there was no flavor. It was really uninteresting. And I think about reading, I believe that like that was like a younger black woman's idea. Like I almost want to say it was like an intern's pitch.
No, yeah, it was.
Yeah, for Spotify Rap to exist in the first place. So the fact that like that has become like an annual damn near holiday on social media of like people posting their Spotify Wrapped. And like last year, it was just over and over again, people being like, "Oh, this is mid this year. I wasn't listening to this artist this much. Like, why are they even on here?" And just things that once again used to be curated by a human, used to have that like factor of like at least somewhat cool, somewhat edgy, that Spotify was like really good at, that some of these other platforms were at least trying to be better at. It's like it doesn't matter anymore. It's like pushing through things through the conveyor belt, getting out as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, so this is why I love talking to you because there's so many different directions that you could take this to. But one thing that I do want to say, and I, I just want to tell you this because I think it's really funny. When we were in, so I recently went to South Africa for a wedding, and we were in Johannesburg, um, with my family, my girlfriend, my dad, and my sister. And we're at this market, this popular market out in Johannesburg called Linden Market, which was really nice. It was cool. I mean, it's like going to kind of like a Sunday market, and they have food and you can thrift, and they have like kind of like people performing and all of this stuff. But then they had like an MC for the event. And the MC was like clearly like an Afrikaans like white woman, but she was trying to do. So think about it in the American cultural context of like the white DJ that puts on like a black scent. So she was trying to put on like a black South African like accent, but going to South Africa, like it's very clear that Black American culture is very big in South Africa in terms of like what the Black South Africans say. So she was doing an accent that was imitating Black South African Black South Africans who are imitating Black American, like a Black American accent. So it just sounded really weird. Like me and Martine and my sister, we were just like, we were roasting her the entire. We could not believe what.
That's low key
Like,
what the AI DJ sounds like.
yeah, no, that's why I was. That's why I brought
Okay.
it up. It was just like when you were doing the little DJ voice, I was imagining that lady's voice talking like what was that? What was that girl that like competed at the breakdancing thing at the Olympics? Like that's literally the energy that she was giving. She was giving like, I cannot remember that woman's name right now, but you know the white Australian lady that was like trying to break dance, and everyone was like, "What is this?" That is the energy that this Afrikaans woman had, and man, it was so funny. It was so funny, but like, yeah, no, Black South Africans like. I remember we were at a hotel, and like we had this guy who was like a waiter. He came up to us and he's talking to me and my girlfriend, and every single sentence at the end of he's like type shit, type shit, type shit, but like in his accent, and it was so funny to me. It was like, why do you keep saying type shit? So throughout the whole trip, I would just be like type shit, type shit, type shit to Martine. But yeah, no, it was really funny. But yeah, sorry. Going back to what you were saying. Yeah, I mean, it's just really clear that creators are the ones that are hurting the most, and the ones that are going to get the short end of the stick. And even like I think about it's not just AI's effect is not just on what we're seeing on the platforms, or the fact that the creativity seems to be lost on the front end. It's also on the back end. Like you also mentioned that the algorithm itself seemed like it wasn't as accurate as it usually is. And a lot of people were complaining about that. And, part of that is the fact that these technology companies are doing all these layoffs and laying off full marketing departments, laying off people that are engineers and data analysts that are supposed to be working on these algorithms. And you're just kind of seeing that it's just we're in a spot. And again, like, let's not act like this is the only time that capitalism has superseded everything, because it's not. But I just think we're in a time where it's so blatant, the prioritization of just how much money can we make. And if we need to cut people, and we're seeing it in government as well, right? How much money can we save? But like, if we need to cut people, if we need to remove creative folks or whatever, like, let's do that. And let's just see what we can get by with when the audience reacts to whatever they have, and then we'll just correct it after. And even like in my industry, I have worked for creative agencies. It's been really, really difficult for people that work for creative agencies. A lot of them cut folks because their clients, they're like, what's the point of having a retainer from an agency when in theory I can just get Sora to generate some sort of video clip for me that I can use, versus having you guys shoot something. Or I can just have Dali or Midjourney create a graphic for me versus paying a graphic designer to do it or whatever. And it's not even that they're using these tools, because the tools, like, I would say Sora is pretty advanced, but still, like, the tools aren't, I don't think a lot of them are at the point where you can actually really use it for a corporate. But it's just the idea of it. It's just the idea that that's there, and I'm paying you thousands of dollars per month to have you and to reach out to you when I need you, versus I could get an intern, from some university that's familiar with using these tools, and get them to do it for me. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, that's where you're seeing it. It's been really, really hard for people that work in creative industries, to, like, find work or whatever. And like, for me, I haven't had a job for a little bit now. It's been a while, but like, it's not just like people like me. It's even worse for the older folks, like the people that are in their 50s, late 40s, early 60s, who are like senior level professionals, and their companies are just like, nah, we're phasing you out. Why do we need an executive creative director? We're just going to have a 30 something year old do this instead. And yeah, you're seeing a lot of these jobs go. And some of those people, even though you couldn't quantify the ROI immediately on what the value that they brought to the room was, you're seeing it in the end result of some of these things. And I really believe that that's what is plaguing Spotify to some degree. Like, you're removing the creative folks from the room, and now you have technology folks that are just like, well, what does the data say? What's the ROI? And I'm not saying you don't need that, but it has to be both. And when you don't have that creative side, it's like things that are like obvious, they just get missed when you're not in the room.
So you're saying you're not going to be listening to Timbaland's new AI artist? That's not something you're
Oh
into?
my God.
You're not into it?
Um, bro, it's so funny because Timbaland has always been an artist that, like, has really valued technology. He's always been on the cutting edge of using, different technology for like music production, or like trying to find new sounds and innovating from that perspective. So I understand. Like, I remember he was big on this backpack that was like a speaker or something, like, or like, it's like a backpack that you could like produce out of or something like that. And he kept wearing
Mm.
it everywhere. Like, he's always been into this stuff. And, you know, I, I think they're to some degree, like, it's always cool to see Black people that are into technology, but also I feel like sometimes we lose the plot. And I feel like this is one of those cases where you're supposed to be someone that champions artist creativity. You have all of these independent artists coming to your platform to showcase their beats and instrumentals or their songs, but also like you're trying to be the first one to have like an AI artist and train that AI artist to make music based off of God knows what and whose music that they're training that on. And it's so fuzzy with some of this new, like the new frontier of technology with regards to IP. And when I say fuzzy, I really mean like it's the wild, wild west. Like, and unfortunately, legislation doesn't catch up as fast as technology is innovated. And then people get hurt. And you have blatant stealing of people's art, of people's music. And it's just kind of sad to see Timbaland, whether he wanted to or not, be the face of that right now. Um, you know, one of our great Black producers.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before about legends not letting themselves be legends, because of like stuff they're trying to do to kind of like keep up. Um, but yeah, like you said, it is like deeply sad to see someone that, you know, as we talked about on our Afrofuturism episode, like someone that was kind of at the forefront of, in the 90s at least, this aesthetic that Timbaland, Aaliyah, Missy, Magoo, folks like that were like really leaning into Afrofuturism and technology. And as we spoke about, like Afrofuturism and that use of technology was always liberation focused, or should have been. That is like the core tenet of like what it is supposed to be, and like creating a utopia for Black folks to live outside of the oppression that we currently live in. And I think that a lot of people do see tech in that light. However, it's also, in my opinion, a little bit of like a, to call it a scam is almost like to simplify it too much, but like the idea that like we can liberate ourselves through these tools that are oppressing other Black people in a lot of other ways, or leading to the more rapid demise of the earth, which is going to affect people outside, a lot of times outside of the United States and in the global South, before it affects us. um and it's really hard to watch people like not think of like the entire landscape of what they're doing, especially someone like Timbaland, who you would think really would be into championing new artists, who had that whole kind of stream thing where he's like, come on, show me your stuff. And like, it looked like something that was like really good and helpful to artists, indie artists that were trying to put themselves out there and work with someone like him. And like, we all know, like, when Timbaland has a bond with someone, like how great that can come out. So to see him, instead of investing in a real human being, investing in a program that is, yeah, inevitably going to be stealing from other creatives, is like, unfortunately, pretty disgusting.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about like I don't want to give him necessarily the benefit of the doubt, but I'm sure he has artists on his label that he's working with, independent artists and all of these, or not independent, but like smaller artists that he's working with, real people that he's working with. But you have to pay attention to how things are released and how things are rolled out. And my question would just be, what were your expectations when you wanted to sign on to this and you wanted to make videos about like, yeah, this is my new AR? Like, what did you think the feedback was going to be? Um, like, and that's where it feels like sometimes some of these people are in bubbles, right? Like they're just not really tapped into what people are really feeling. And like, look, I think in terms of like the conversation of like, utilizing technology and the advancement of Black people, the fact that Black people oftentimes are left out of, or not allowed to use certain technologies. And we have to innovate and use things ourselves in certain ways because we aren't given a seat at the table to be able to have access to these things. There is something to be said for that. It's really interesting because like AI has kind of been like the major innovation, AI and machine learning and really like LLMs. have been kind of the frontier after I would say like NFTs and crypto. And like if you think about it, like because I don't know, just working in marketing, it's always really interesting. Like I feel like marketing agencies specifically always want to angle themselves as like being cutting edge, especially to tech companies. So whatever the new hot topic is what everyone's going to talk about in marketing. So that's my perspective. But I remember when it was the metaverse, like the metaverse was like the huge, like we're all going to be in the metaverse and we're all sitting at home right now, but we're all going to like virtually be in these rooms. And I'm like, there were people buying virtual houses and property. And it's like, there's going to be a virtual globe and I'm going to own this much property in the globe. And it's like, so many people trying to rush to the new thing and then invest in it just in case like it blows up and it does become a thing. And there is something to be said for being able to have access and be able to put our minds in onto these things and creating and developing new things. But also at the same time, as we've seen with NFTs, right? Like it's the wild, wild west. There's no regulations. And oftentimes like it's a lot of people that don't care about intellectual property. It's a lot of people who don't care to move ethically. And I think that's a huge part of, I mean, we saw it in the strikes. The actor, I mean, it wasn't just actors, but the Directors Guild, the Acting Guild,
The writers
the
primarily.
writers, yeah, like a lot of those arguments, not all of them, but a lot of them were disputes over worries about AI use, worries of like whether they could change actors lines or change things with AI. Like that was a big, big concern. And or just even being wholly replaced by artificial intelligence. And it's a fight that is being fought in a lot of creative spaces right now in industries. But yeah, it's just really sad to see Timbaland kind of align himself with this. Um, Even as I think I'm probably a little bit more empathetic with the idea that I think, we do need to try and adopt new technologies, but also there's an ethical way to do that, I think. And as you said, like the global south, with climate change and all of that and how it's negatively going to affect them over anyone. I think there was a study done where they said overall AI use and the amount of energy that it takes to continuously run and use these AI models. I think they said it's the equivalent to the amount of energy that Japan used in a year or something like that. So, I mean, like it's a lot. It's a lot of energy. And hopefully there are innovations that are made from a perspective of like energy consumption where it doesn't take up as much energy. I think I forget what the AI platform was that came out of China like a couple months ago, but like that was a huge part of why everyone was excited about that. DeepSeek was what it was called. People were really excited about DeepSeek because it used a lot less energy overall versus ChatGPT and some of these. And you hope that there's innovations that are made in that way so that we're able to use these technologies in ways that actually save people's lives, right? Like when it comes to finding new combinations for medication or chemicals and things like that, or even optimizing like, energy grids in Africa and other places where they have trouble kind of managing electricity across the city and they have to have these power outs and everything. You hope that it gets used in a way that positively affects people, the marginalized people, disenfranchised people, and makes the world a better place. But humans are selfish beings, and the capitalist kind of hunger. People are just trying to find an advantage that they can use to make more money or be better and than the next person. And that's what's sad about it to me.
Yeah, I think the world we live in right now, if people are going to have to raise hell for them to actually do it the right way.
Yeah.
So we definitely have to like get to that point. I'm not inciting anything. But yeah, I agree. It's like I want AI to clean the oceans. I don't want it to do graphic design. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When Drake dropped that AI Tupac, whatever that was, I obviously it was like one of the most like disrespectful things I could think to do for like an artist who is no longer with us in general. Um However, I was screaming because it's just the concept of that is pretty crazy. The fact that he was able to do it pretty quickly, and we started to see around that time like a lot of different like AI songs, AI drops. We're going to get to a point where, and I think there was like a certain point last summer, and I know like some of those platforms like maybe don't exist anymore, but like things were dropping and it's like, is this actually like what they said or is it not? Like, and I think like there's going to be an overall problem with artistic integrity that is stemming from this, whether it's like full AI artists or like beings like these AI like chat bots like on Instagram and stuff now that like are having like full personalities and followings, and yeah, like people being able to be like, oh, new da 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 dropped and it's a completely fake song. And I just see a lot of, to all the points we've been making, like really really scary stuff in the creative realm, and it sucks because I wish we lived in a world where like this was going to be more helpful than harmful.
Yeah, last year was a really interesting time. I mean, even in the just the fact that that was like a thing that Drake did in the beef, and like he's always kind of been an artist where I feel like he sometimes either popularizes something that sets the precedent for everyone to start doing, even though he didn't start it, or he started something and then he sets the precedent. So like I remember with the Meek Mill beef and that back and forth, and like Drake, I think it was at his OVO festival that he has in Toronto. I remember he like shot like he performed back to back and then had like memes of Meek Mill like on video on screen while he's performing it. And like memes became such a big part of beefing and like photos. The social media aspect I feel like became such a massive part of rap beef, and just like the rules of that, and how you can win. It's not just about the music, it's not just about the words that you say anymore. And my concern, even though it's like a very, I mean, like it's not the thing that people focus on from that, but like my concern is just like maybe that's something that, you know, people do in the future a lot more, or even like trying to make like an AI song sound like a rapper that you're trying to go against said something whack and then responding to it. So like, I don't know. It's just like and then obviously like there was the whole like BBL Drizzy like songs and all the AI songs that kept coming out after that. And that was funny. Like that was like an example of it being really funny. But I remember there was a song that sounded just like The Weeknd, but it was AI, and it was like, can you tell that this is like The Weeknd or AI? And it didn't, like, it sounded just like him, but it was like 90% of the way there. Like you could tell that it wasn't fully him, but it was really really close. And I feel like that was like a moment where a lot of like music fans were just like, oh shit, this is getting pretty crazy and close to being perfected. But I think the lawsuits happened at first last year. I just saw an article as well, a recent article. But I know like UMG and some of the other major labels sued Udio and Suno, which are two of the main music AI platforms where you can literally like go on the platform and be like, I want to make uh um I'm only thinking of her name because I saw a video of her recently, but I want to make a Patrice Russian techno song. Like you could just enter that into Udio, and then like it would make the song for you. And it's training their models on actual IP, and they're not getting like, we could talk about the ethics of that. Obviously, it's not ethical, but also the artists aren't getting money from that either. Like it's not just stealing from an artistic integrity perspective. There's also a financial element of it as well that is pretty messed up. So like I remember the labels sued, but I recently saw an article about, I think like they said a country singer created their own lawsuit to sue this country singer named Tony Justice filed a lawsuit against Suno and Udio as well, just to represent the thousands of independent artists. Because independent artists as well, like their work is being stolen, and if you're not a part of one of these major labels that has the gang of lawyers or the resources to be able to fight back, your stuff's just going to get ripped off, and you're not going to be able to do anything. And these are people's livelihoods. Like these are people, some of these independent artists touring and their music, that is the way that they make money and put food on the table for their families. And for there to just be no regulations around this, or just like people for the sake of like, oh, technology is really cool, like look at what we created, but you're literally stealing. Like it's shameful. It's wrong. And I hope these lawsuits are successful. These people get their money back. I hope a lot of regulations are put in place around AI use in music as well. It's sad. It's sad.
It's sad. I think there was like a time where, as you might remember, the internet was exciting. Where like the idea of the internet and what it could do for people, what it could do for artists, like just thinking like early days of MySpace and like artists being able to like connect with audiences directly was such a cool and exciting thing. I think like there is a world in which like there is such a positive role for technological advancements to play in artistry, but when the goal by capitalists is to replace the artist rather than support the artist, then it's a whole different story. And again, when all of that leads to literally God knows what, in terms of the environmental impact, and the fact that like climate change, climate catastrophe, it's not coming, it's here. People that are not maybe in the United States, not in privileged positions, have already been feeling the effects. Um, it's it's wild, and I don't know if it's like controversial or hot take to say, but I do think there's something interesting about like platforms that do genuinely kind of have that um kind of artist first mentality. Bandcamp, for instance, and like thinking about the fact that like we do have the like it can often not seem like it, and in some places we do, in some places we don't, but like as the audience, as the consumers, we can choose to go back to buying music whenever we want. We can choose to like support artists, and I'm not saying it's an accessible thing and like we've all been trained to not do so. um but I guess like it's an interesting conversation of like where the consumers choose to go when these platforms are doing both us and the artists dirty.
Yeah. It's interesting because they're just simultaneous conversations happening in different industries, but around the same thing. And I think a lot about fashion and conscious consumerism in fashion, or even food, right? Like the truth is, conscious consumerism is expensive. Conscious consumerism, it doesn't have to be, but most of the forms that are proposed to people in terms of how to consume consciously and all this stuff, it's expensive. It is expensive. The very first company that I worked for was a company called Unique Markets that touted conscious consumerism, and rightfully so, they do. Owned by a dear friend and former boss, Sonia Rasula. But what she would do is she would have all of these different small businesses who were like artisan creators or craftsmen, people that were creating high design products, whether it be rugs, it could be home decor, fashion, beauty products, um, everything that you could really think of. But like, they would make it, and you go there and you'd want to support them and buy stuff from these people. And it's a way better option than buying from Amazon or any of these places. But the truth is that because they don't have the resources or the massive supply chain and machine to bring their prices as low down as possible, it's more expensive. It just is. It's more expensive. And, um, you see that in retail, you see that in like food as well. Like when it comes to, unfortunately in America, when you want to buy healthy food and you go to Whole Foods instead of going to, um, I guess for you maybe like a Publix, but like in Maryland, like the lower budget grocery stores are like Food Lion and Shoppers and stuff like that. Um, like, and even like Safeway. Safeway is more expensive as well, but like, like it's probably the same price, honestly, as Whole Foods. But my point is, in order to get like healthier or organic or non-GMO or any of that stuff, like you got to spend more money. You got to be able to afford a lifestyle to be able to do that. And I think that's the difficult part where like asking like, yes, we as consumers, whatever we can with the power that we have, we need to signal to the market, because that's just how capitalism works. We need to signal to the market where we're putting our dollars and what we want to invest in. But also at the same time, it's a top down and bottom up approach. The industry, they need to change the model as well, because like it's just not going to be affordable for the person for the people that can't even afford a Spotify, that are just ripping or streaming things on YouTube for free. Like it's not affordable to expect them to pay for $10, $15 for an album. Like that's not. It's just not. Mm-mm.
Yeah, no.
So
It
it's hard. It's hard.
it's definitely a both and conversation. I guess the point I was getting at is like the noise has to be made, because otherwise the people at the top, they're not going to change what they're doing. It's working
Yep.
for them. It's us
Yep.
who it's not working for.
Yep.
Um, but we can get to the revolution on another at another time.
The revolution will not be televised.
But I do think it's a really interesting conversation about like what it means to be truly anti-capitalist when you have artists that are like super pro black, but at the same time, like someone like Jay-Z saying like capitalist is the new N word, and like it is truly terrifying what they're going to do if we just let them. But I do think that there's space for at least the conversations to be had. So I think it's good that like at least like when the Timbaland thing came up, people weren't like, "Oh, cool, awesome." It was people were like, "What the fuck is this?" And we need more of that. We need more of that about all of this AI stuff. I'm sorry, y'all. Do not use ChatGPT as your therapist. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
like certain things like we do have to draw the line somewhere,
Yeah.
even though, a lot of the stuff we can't control, but at the same time, they don't want us to say anything.
I mean, there was still that story I saw. I feel like it happened either late last year or early this year, but there was actually a little black boy that ended up killing himself, um, after having like a bunch of conversations with ChatGPT, and basically would ask ChatGPT about suicide and his feelings and his depression. And, you know, uh, the conclusion that he came to from talking to ChatGPT was that maybe it would be best for him to just not be here. And yeah, it's really, really sad. It's really, 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 really sad. But like, it's hard. It's hard for people. And I think the thing that is sad about it to me is it also reinforces this idea that we should turn to the internet versus turning to people. The internet, when it's good, yeah, like, can it encourage a communal environment and can you have like community connections? Yeah. But also at the same time, like, it can also encourage individualistic, like, very like, I'm only going to interact with my computer. My computer is going to be the thing that tells me what my value is, or where I fit in society or whatever. And if you think about Instagram, they're basically social avatars that we're creating, and you can meet someone that exists totally differently online than they actually exist in person. Yeah, it's a much larger conversation, but even with all of the negative things that we're seeing technology bring, especially with how it threatens creativity, how it threatens the environment in certain places, with regard to like AI, do you think that there's any way that technology can be helpful for music consumption? And is there a role for technology in music consumption?
To say there isn't a role would be untrue. I mean, we have been like doing like building an online and in real life platform for a couple years now, but we have utilized this technology to connect with people who were listening to us across the globe that we've never met before. Artists are able to kind of escape the model that some labels were putting on them and build their own organic following in order to come into their career with a certain level of agency that is afforded to them by the fact that they were able to build their own audience. So there's definitely a lot of good that comes from that. A lot of artists I wouldn't know of, a lot of artists that I never would have found if they weren't on my Discover Weekly once upon a time. However, I I definitely think that like we're pretty far gone in terms of the way technology has gone from like aiding the artist to like controlling the landscape. Um and I personally feel like I'm at the point where it's like I'd rather it go back to how it used to be than continue going in this direction. And obviously, I think that would come with different things in terms of like abusive labels and lawyers and people who are just like stealing money from insert most like 80s 90s black artists here who were like, oh yeah, my accountant, my label, whoever, was just like straight up stealing from me. um but I do mean it in the sense that like it would be nice if people had a relationship with music that wasn't completely controlled by algorithms. I think that would also be a better way to go. I think people would have a deeper connection to music. And circling back to Vic Mensa's point, I think there's a conversation a lot that happens when people like an artist. And because of the way technology has kind of trained us, they're like, this artist should be dropping so much, or people are in Steve Lacy's comments, people are in Smino's comments, like, drop the album, drop the album. Where's the album? Where's the album? Where's the album? And I remember Smino being like, can y'all niggas shut up? Like, I'm a creative person. I'm not just like, I can't just like push things out. Like, it takes time, it takes process. And I do think technology and the sheer amount of artists that are out there doing things, it's brought down the quality, it's brought down like our expectations for certain things, and we're expecting machine like output from real humans. A lot of people, in my opinion, not thinking about the emotional tax and everything that goes into making a body of work. People that are like shitting on Frank Ocean when he's like clearly going through stuff and being like, he just needs to drop da 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 da. which is probably the reason we will never hear from that man again. Like there's just so much that it is at the point where, unfortunately, yeah, I don't think the good is outweighing the bad right now. I do think there is a lot of benefit we could get from technology, but not when it's tied so closely to people that are putting profit over anything else.
Yeah. I I think I'm a bit more optimistic on it than you are. Just because I don't know. I definitely see what you're saying, and I agree with I agree with a lot of what you said. But also I see technology, and even this era that we're in, like if you want to call it the streaming and SoundCloud era and all of that, or we're not in the SoundCloud era, but SoundCloud giving way to this era in a lot of ways. What I have really enjoyed about this era, and what I think is something that I wouldn't want to go back to, is the way that it democratized artists' ability to create music, upload music, and be heard. And I think there's a lot of people that we consume that we would never get without that, just because, to your point that you had, like, like even talking about Motown, or some of these labels that were either black owned or had black people at prominent positions of power. At the end of the day, it's a white dominated industry. And everything that we talk about with Black to Infinity, when it comes to the boxes and like genres and all of that, like a lot of that is a function of how white people consume and see music, and then the space that we're allowed to fit in within that. And I think without the democratization of platforms that we're able to upload to, technology that we can use at home, like Logic or any of those like programs that you Ableton, whatever, like the fact that you could just make a song on your laptop and you don't have to be signed, you don't have to like bussing down like on a corner or whatever, and like that's how you get found. Like the fact that people just have access, and like someone tomorrow could just be like, wow, I hear melodies in my head, I just want to record it and put it out and see what someone thinks. Like I think that not only is really cool, I think that has greatly benefited black people, because oftentimes we weren't given the avenues or the spaces to be able to exist. And like, I've heard artists like a Pink Sweats talk about stuff like this from the perspective of like, back in the day when it was more label dominated, like he might not fit the image of what an R&B singer should look like or what a pop singer should look like. And if he tried to go through up the ranks of like the labels, he wouldn't have been as big as he is now. We might never have even heard his music, because like, no, you don't really have the look, or no, your music sounds a little too much like Bieber, but you're black. I don't think he would have had the lane that he does, and even like, like we talk about Miguel a lot, and how Miguel is underrated in the label kind of issues and the perceptions that he was having in the industry when he first came out, and how he didn't fit the traditional mold. And now we look at Miguel and we're like, Miguel is like traditional R&B in a lot of ways, and Miguel is like a mold and a model for certain artists now. But even when he was coming up, they were like, this dude, he black, but he looked kind of like, why he look like that? And it's like, oh, well, I'm half Mexican. I also speak Spanish. I also want to put some Spanish in my music. I also, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, but like, why is his sound like that? It's not Neo. It's not Chris Brown. It's not whatever it is. And I feel like the way that it worked was so like, if you don't fit this shape, or if we already have a star on our roster, or a square on our roster, then we can't sign you and no one's going to hear you. And from that perspective, I really am happy with this era. I think the real issue is when you have technology folks and like these tech bros and capitalists. And the capitalists have always been there, but I think the new element is the tech bros owning and controlling companies that are commoditizing off of creatives. That, I feel like that is the main issue, because they're not going to have the mind for how do we create the best environment? How do we prioritize the creatives? They don't care about that. They just care about innovating technology wise and making bottom dollar for their investors. And that's where I feel like it gets messed up personally. But I definitely hear you in how far things have gotten, how artistry has been compromised, how music. We started this conversation by talking about the fact that music has been devalued, how it's harder for people to make music. And yeah, some of that is just the streaming model that we have, but also some of that is there's so many more things vying for your attention. Like there's so much more music in the market. And I'm not saying that's what assigns the value, but I'm just saying that would still be a thing, even if we were still on CDs or whatever. So, I don't know, like as a Libra, there's both sides. And I see
Yeah,
both
because
sides.
I completely agree with everything you said. Like 100% agree. I think something that it made me think of while you were talking is this idea of, you know, this is a bigger question than like obviously music and technology. It's unfortunately capitalism in a big way.
Right.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's the idea that if you're a musician, you to be able to be a full-time musician in the way that like it's supposed to look, you're supposed to kind of like get famous or whatever. Versus again, there was a time where it's like, okay, I play at these clubs in this area. If I can feed my family, if I'm regularly playing, like that's fine. I don't have to be the top streaming da da da. I don't have to like be famous. As it gets more and more expensive to live in this world, and as the gap between the rich and the poor gets bigger, and as like you can no longer just kind of like casually exist, like the dissolution of the middle class. It's like all of these things, like you can't just be like, hey, I'm a musician,
Yeah.
and it be like a casual thing. Like it's kind of like either you're a starving artist who's literally struggling to stay alive, or you're like pretty rich, pretty wealthy, doing really well for yourself. And obviously we know there's an in between of a lot of artists that like you and I probably listen to, but it's like it's this game that you have to keep playing, that's not gonna be enough in this society, because it's not like none of it a lot of us are like not doing well. And the fact that we have to like overly monetize our creativity in order to get anywhere, I think is a big part of this. I'm thinking a lot about like just like, are there actually more artists now, or is it just like
There
the fact
definitely
that
are.
we can see, well yes, but like, you know, it's like we don't really have like clubs and open mics and things that people are going to regularly, where there used to
Mm-hmm.
be different musicians in those every single night playing to people in each city. Like it wasn't necessarily as much touring all over the world. It might have been like, these people are regular at this club in this neighborhood and they play every single night. They have a huge fan base. They sell it out every Saturday. You know, like 100% there, yes, there are more, but like I do think it more regularly people might have been able to be like session musicians and like different things where they didn't have to be the star, or they didn't have to like get to this certain level. And it's like, I personally am not a musician, so I'm sure there are elements of like this version that are much better than that like grind 100%. I guess what I'm saying is like it's hard that like you have to stay on that grind and stay continually relevant in that huge zeitgeist. And I wonder what the difference would be. Again, as we brought it up earlier, but just go more into it. We both got the chance to see Chance the Rapper do his like Starline kind of shows that he's been touring around with, where he's been showing new music to like small audiences of people, doing like a what maybe like an hour and a half, like 2 hour kind of like session where you're in a room, you're listening to his new music. They're either music videos or lyric videos projected on the screen, and after that he's doing like a kind of Q&A where you get like a more of an intimate experience with the audience. Obviously, like no one has the bandwidth to do that all the time in every city, like so like everyone can experience it, but like that is much closer to what music used to be. Like I think beyond even Beyonce doing like the Chitlin circuit for this tour rather than going to every single city, like things like that are just like a lot closer to how things used to run in terms of the artist not killing themselves. Like not, and again, I'm not saying like one was better than the other, because I'm sure there were so many versions of that part that people were like, I don't want to do this anymore. I
Mhm.
guess I'm just saying like models outside of the way streaming works being the only way.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely not. And, you know, I think in conversations when we're talking about how do we make things better, you can never just reject the why do we just accept that this is the model that we have to work within, right? Like whether we're talking about like policing or we're talking about even like, incarceration and all of those things, like why does that have to be the model? Does it have to be the model? And like feeling like you have to operate within that model, like it's a given and that's just how things have always been and that's how it will always be. That's just not true. That's not true. And I agree with you that it's going to take some reimagining. Like, and it's funny, but like everything that we're talking about exists in the film industry. Like, it's like parallel conversations, literally. I remember like The Brutalist, which won. Uh, it didn't win Best Picture. Anora won Best Picture, but I think it won Best Score and a couple of other Oscar awards. But a huge controversy around The Brutalist was the fact that for Adrian Brody's accent, he was supposed to have like a Hungarian accent, and they used AI to modify his voice to help him have like a more accurate Hungarian accent. And that was like a huge thing, like right before like Oscar time, because they were trying to there was a lot of smear campaign stuff happening at the time. Yeah, whether it was what's that what Amelia, whatever that mess of a movie was, Amelia Perez, or some of these movies that were all trying to contend for best picture or best female actor, best male actor, all that stuff. But yeah, there was that was a huge story, and it was really interesting because I saw The Brutalist, and I thought it was long. It was really long, but I thought it was a really good movie. But yeah, just having that be one of the major first like high profile like AI kind of controversies that happened, and then I think the movie that won Best Animation as well, I think was completely made in AI or something like that. It was like a cat movie. Can't remember what it's called, but that yeah, but like the way that they used it was really really creative. Like it wasn't just like, oh, let's just put in the generator. They used the technology creatively. So there's a medium in between, I think, in terms of artistic and creative use. I think the thing that needs to happen is what we're doing right now, having these conversations. But I think creatives and artists need to be at the table, and we need to be prioritizing them in terms of creating an environment that more favorable for them to be able to survive off of the art that they're making. And it's not like they're the last ones that get to benefit off of their work and everyone else gets to take a dollar or a penny or whatever from them. And I think that's like really, yeah, that's where I'd bookend that conversation, just because I think like, you know, even with Spotify, like in us both first having our own individual experiences with Spotify, and like the algorithm being like the major draw. I mean, algorithm and UI really, but like the algorithm being so helpful in the way that it was like suggesting music that was so similar to like the music that we were already listening to. There are so many artists that I discovered through Spotify that I would have never found because of that. And I think that's an example of like where technology is good. And when it brings artists that only have a couple thousand listens on their biggest song that they have, and they come across your platform, and you hear a song from them, and now you're listening to them and you're supporting them and you're championing them, and hopefully they're able to put more money into their pocket and get bigger and have more opportunities. And I think that's like a positive way that technology can be used. But I think at the end of the day, like, we need to have a mindset, a communal mindset around how do we make sure that the creators are prioritized, that we create an environment where they can keep creating, that their art and the value of their art is not devalued. And then how do we make it somewhat favorable for them where they can be able to survive off of the work that they're creating as well. And I think that's like the most important.
Yeah, and I think it's um I'm in some ways very afraid but also excited for the fact that I think we're kind of in a phase of you know, the world as we know it, to be honest, where things will be changing. Things have
Right.
to change. There's
Yeah.
no normal. There's no kind of everything is in transition. Um and with that, that means that like it is important for artists, for audience members, for consumers, for people that care about the well-being of the earth and people and society to like talk to
Yeah.
have their voices be heard, to your point, like come to the table, create new tables, etc. For these conversations, because like if we just sit back and see what happens, bad and worse things will continue to happen. um but if there are artists who are saying like, hey guys, like I like living on Earth. I don't want to be Wally. I don't want to be like living on the space station. Um, I do think like certain things can change and technology can and should be used for good. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about what that could mean in the fact that like we're not, to your point, it's like we're not there yet. AI can't make a perfect image yet. AI can't make a
Mm-mm.
movie yet. AI can't make
Mm-mm.
a song that is completely like, oh my God, this is like just as good as a human yet. Like we're not there. So it's like while we're at this point where things are still kind of in transition, we're still like things are still being worked on. I think it's, yeah, important to be having these conversations. And also, everyone listening to this, talk to your parents because
Facts.
they are out here getting scammed and duped and all
Mm.
types of things
Mm.
all on the internet. Talk to your parents, talk to the people around you. Like,
Mm.
let's definitely be having these conversations because once again, if we don't, things are definitely gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. But I do think there's an opportunity. Like it's not like they can't make AI, to your point, like of DeepSeek and things like that. It's not like they can't make AI that won't completely bring us into climate catastrophe
Right.
sooner than
Yeah.
later. They're just not.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. They're just
Mm-hmm.
not doing that right now. Um, so yeah, I think that like anything technology going forward, whether it's like AI or like literally anything, I think it's good to be questioning it right now and to be kind of like in the space of having discussions about what it truly means. Um and yeah, like thinking about like art in general and living in like a capitalist landscape and like thinking about what it does mean to you, which I think is why like I always loved shows like again 106 in Park and TRL because they really like connected you to the artist and made you think about like how this is affecting people or even like seeing people react to seeing their favorite artist in their face. Like it is a bit different now that we have social media and we have a lot more access to people. um but I think it's really interesting for us to think about like what is art? Like on a
Right.
basic level, like what is music? Like what is the point?
Right.
Like is the point that like I know all the coolest artists that exist ever, and like now I have super good taste, and like I can I can prove to people that like I'm super cool because I know these like really awesome 700 artists? Or is it like, yeah, I actually go see this jazz show in my neighborhood um every week, and these are the coolest people in the world to me? Do we need to consume 100 songs a day? Like, do we need to have, I'm not saying it's not good to have access, but it is interesting to kind of like take the step back and peel back. It's like, what is this actually doing for me? Like, I
Right.
started listening to a lot more music that I was really into as a teenager. One, because I'm in my kind of inner child healing, but inner teenager healing moment in general. But I realized how much more happy it made me. Like it is making me so much more happy to listen to the music that I discovered way more organically as a teenager than it is to like sift through new music. And you could say like a lot of things about that. Like I know Andre 3000 and other people have had things to say about like frequencies in music and different things that are happening right now, but it's been interesting to kind of do my own little check of like, how do I feel when I'm listening to this music? Like, why am I really consuming it? Am I trying to prove to other people that like I'm the coolest person ever and like have the super cool taste? Or like, am I really enjoying this? Like, what's the point? What is this doing for me?
You know, you're touching on something that's really, really fascinating and interesting. But not just that, like I think it's a question that we all really, really need to ask ourselves, which is like, what is what is the soul of something? Like, what is the thing that makes something intrinsically important for why we do the things that we do and crave the things that we crave and consume the things that we consume? And as you were talking, I've been having a lot of these conversations, but like I'm sure you see them like in New York or in LA, like, and really everywhere, like just like how the club scene has kind of died down in general, and I have hypotheses for why, but the club scene has kind of died down, and it's really shifted to like kind of more of these like social clubs or like community events that are more in like the daytime, like, oh, I'm going to go to a DJ set at a coffee shop, or I'm going to go to this macrame class, or I'm going to go to like a bouquet making thing or whatever. Like, I feel like post pandemic, like we've all been craving genuine connection and community. But I think what we're running up against is one, kind of losing the skill set of learning how to socialize in a lot of ways and make new connections. And I've really like, you're actively catching me in a place in my life where I'm actively choosing to work on my social skills, which used to be, I would say, excellent. But they deteriorated, between the pandemic and then having two remote jobs over the span of like 4 to 5 years. I was just inside the house all the time. And like I was overworked, and I wasn't talking to a lot of people in general on a week to week basis, but I definitely wasn't talking to a lot of new people. And you kind of lose the skill of putting yourself in uncomfortable social settings and having to talk to people and talk about yourself and find real, genuine ways to connect. So I think part of it is that muscle has atrophied for a lot of people. But I also think a huge part of it as well is with social media, we've gotten into this place of like hyper personalization where it's not hyper personalization because we're actually interested in the things that we're interested in. It's performative hyper personalization. It's picking things that are niche or obscure so that we can align ourselves with things that we think are cool or we want the same kind of sheen or effect that we see people that are in these groups to have. We want that associated with us, or it's performative in the sense of like even within what we're doing, right? Like how many artists can you know? Oh, you don't know that artist? Like how do you not know that artist? You say that you're this person. Well, that came out like a year and a half ago. And it's like the need to say, oh shit, I'm late. Like it's like, are you late? Or were you doing other like so it's like, is this conversation of like, are we just doing things to signal to everyone what we want to be associated with and how we want people to see us and categorize us? Or do we want to do things for the sake of actually enjoying them? And I think the thing that's really cool about that kind of teenage phase that we all have is it's like, it's a moment where we're discovering ourselves. We're discovering what we like. We're trying things. Some things work, some things don't work. And like we're being exposed to new things. We're learning about our bodies. We're learning about the issues in the world and how it's not maybe as peachy keen as maybe our parents or what we thought it was. I think there is something to like going back to old songs to remember to put us in this place of like wonderment and discovery and feeling those feelings again. But also at the same time, we're in a world where the reason I brought up those events in the beginning is I feel like with those community events, we've taken that performative nature of like going to the club and like the exclusivity of that, and we've applied it to these community events. A lot of times people go to these community events and they're just sticking with their cliques. They're not talking to anybody. They just stay amongst themselves. And then it's like, let me put on my story that I was there just to show that I was there so that when someone sees on your story that you were at this place, it's like, oh, you know about this cool niche thing. You're cool, you look cool. I want to be associated with you. I'm interested in you. But it's not actually, did you enjoy yourself there? Like, did you have a good time while you were there? Did you meet new people when you were there? Was there anything authentic or genuine about that space that you were in? And I think a lot of people are having trouble creating those environments, first of all. But second of all, finding those environments.
Yeah. Bring back the clubs. I'm ready. I'm
I'm
ready.
out. I'm
I'm
out. I'm
ready.
out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out.
I'm ready. And speaking of, the club will be seeing me all weekend. Happy Juneteenth. New York, where we at? Yeah, I agree on all fronts. I think like we're in a very weird place, but at the same time, I do think like a lot of people are at least getting to the same page of being like, yo, the way we've been doing it, like this is not it. Like something's got to give.
We're waking up.
Um, yeah, I think like some of those things did come out of like good intentions of like let's do a smaller community based thing or and not do an exclusive club bottle type environment, but at the same time it's like yeah, people aren't actually building community in those spaces either, unfortunately. um but I do think there are a lot of avenues to do that, and I think it's good for people to, even though sometimes TikTok oversaturates things, I do think like there are a lot of things I've been put onto, spaces I've been put onto of smaller, intimate performances, of musicians putting themselves out there, of different things in that realm. So Far Sounds, I think, is like one of them. They like, will do like intimate shows at these different places, and people are able to like build like authentic audiences. So it's kind of like a, to the technology conversation, like a yes and, like a both and, but how do we find the ethical way to do this rather than leaning fully into I'm just gonna do whatever is available to me that I can like completely monetize. Finding the balance that we Libras love.
I do think though that that's why, like to your point of feeling the feelings that you do when you listen to music that you loved as a teen, I feel like that's why a lot of these events are going back to nostalgia and retro and like all of that because they're like the world is shitty now. Like I want us to associate, and it's not even like the world wasn't bad back then. I think we just all do this thing where we block out the negative things, and we look back on things with this kind of um, through this filter of the best elements and the shared experiences that we all had. Even like 2014, 2015, I feel like now I'll see like posts of like, you remember where we were all just listening to No Type and Tuesday? And it's like I'll start to smile when I think about it, but it's like, wait, like that was also like Ferguson and like you know what I mean? Like it's not like, but I think we just do that. I think there's going to be a point in time where we look back on the 2020s. I mean, even COVID. Like I'm hearing people like fantasize and think about
I miss
COVID and how
lockdown.
yeah, like it just is how we are as human beings, and I think it's interesting, but also at the same time, I think like in terms of building community, it's why I really really love Interlude Listening Club, and I'm excited to like start going harder with Interlude Listening Club, just because. And for those that don't know, Interlude Listening Club, basically it's a event that we do where we invite a bunch of like music lovers, DJs, artists, and yeah, people who just love talking about music, listening to music. And what we do basically is we will listen to an album beforehand, similar to like a book club, and then we'll discuss it after. And we'll have like in depth conversations and discussions about the album and the artist and your experience listening to the album. But what I really love about the times that we have done an early listening club is just like the genuine connection, being able to have, certain types of conversations that maybe you and I have frequently, but people don't have on a day-to-day basis, or they're not used to thinking in that way or using their brain in that way. And it's so cool when you start to see people like they're listening to someone and that you just see them starting to smile because like they're having the same thought, or they make a connection. They're like, wow, like yeah, I didn't know that you could engage with music to this depth and to this level. And I think it's just gonna be about finding an authentic, spaces and places like that where you're not going there to be seen, you're going there to participate.
Yeah. I think some of this came with like the TikTok ban, but I think we're starting to peel back the fanciness of the influencers and the being all like put together in order to be seen. And I think there's like a certain level of authenticity that had been and maybe has been lost that I think people are craving more and more once again. And I think that spaces like Interlude um, are ones that like we can just like genuinely nerd out. We can just like make real connections and like have the types of conversations that I know you and I enjoy having that like are just like genuinely stimulating, and we're not like kind of just like trying to impress each other. um and yeah, I also, to toot our own horns, think we've made some really good picks in terms of the albums we're listening to, and we're very intentional about choosing albums that you can talk about for hours, that you can like really dive into and go into like each, track by track, like what really drew you in, what you liked, what you didn't like. Most of the time what we liked, because once again, we're picking like really, really fantastic, really beautiful albums. Um, so I'm excited to keep growing that community as well. You can always hit up black2infinity.com if you want to be in our community, and we'll be sure to like let you know about upcoming things we're doing both virtually and in our respective cities, in New York and LA, and hopefully beyond at some point. And yeah, I think it's very exciting to be building something real, and to be building some of these spaces that we're talking about of like, yeah, like what are the avenues for independent artists to exist and be supported and have an audience, and to not have to rely on big label, big music industry, in a complete way to exist.
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to check us out on our website. It's black2infinity.com. On socials, on Instagram and TikTok, we're black222 infinity, 3 number 2s. And loved having this discussion. If you want to hear more content like this, check us out on our feed on Spotify, Black to Infinity Radio, or on our YouTube, Black to Infinity, which we're going to start uploading a lot of videos and audio up to. So we'll be active over there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can hit our archives on our website, listen to old episodes as well, catch up. But I'm really excited to get back into it, um, and be chatting with you guys more regularly in different forms than we used to. Lots of exciting things coming up.
Yep, I'm really excited as well. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. I hope you guys get a plate of food from somewhere. If there is a cookout somewhere, you guys listen to some good music. We're actually going to drop a playlist tomorrow. If you need some cookout music, if you need some good vibes, definitely centered it around, I've been calling it like kind of cosmic groove kind of period of time, late 70s, 80s music. And that's really what I've been listening to, believe it or not, speaking of nostalgia. So we hope you guys enjoy it and love it. And happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. Peace.
Peace.